Hi, my name is Kim Davenport, and I am the Communications Manager for Tacoma Historical Society. And it is my great pleasure tonight to be talking with Dionne Bonner, whose artwork is currently on display in our museum. Her exhibit, titled A Pioneering Spirit, is one of 3 exhibits we currently have on display. And I am delighted that she is joining me to talk about her work, what brought about this project, and to talk a little bit more about the African-American pioneers whose portraits make up that exhibit. So welcome, Dionne. Thank you for talking with me.
Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I thought we could just start with a really open-ended question of what brought you to this work and what are your connections to, I know you have strong connections to Hilltop and are interested in telling the stories of African-American pioneers who might have connections to that neighborhood and also more broadly in the region. So what brought you to this work?
Well, actually, the exhibit title is A Pioneering Spirit, a Fight for Liberty and Freedom. And so for me, so this was the first commission piece project that I did straight out of art school. And so I was just trying to figure out who I was as an individual, as an artist, and discover, my voice. And so I happened to be selected as the artist to work with the museum. It's no longer in Tacoma, but it was called the African American Museum of Tacoma, Washington. And learning this history opened up a world to me that I had not known about the contributions of my own people to the state that I lived in. I had been taught this history in Washington state history in school, and I hadn't been introduced in any other way. I wasn't really a person that knew a lot about museums or any of that. I wasn't introduced to that. And so this exhibit's really special to me because it showed me the incredible contributions that African Americans have made to this state in a time when they were not considered equal, when they couldn't do things, when they didn't have the freedoms that other people had to own land and to live where they wanted to live, but yet they still endured and made these lasting contributions that people don't even still know about today. So that encouraged me as a young woman, finding my confidence within myself and within my skill set and being able to go for that, So that's the basic reason that this is a very special exhibit for me. Also, because I was developing my skill set as an artist and fell in love with portraiture, fell in love with, finding as much as possible as I can about a subject matter through an exploration process, and then taking that knowledge and the natural abilities and then the learned skills that I had just learned and bringing that character of that subject matter, in this case would be, these pioneers, to life through, the brushstrokes and my vision and my, my interpretation as an artist. So I really kind of discovered what I was good at also. So those are kind of 2 really main reasons. And then a lot of the stories had to do with they're pioneers from the Pacific Northwest, but they're pioneers that really affected really the exact location that my family actually ended up migrating from the South and living in, which was the Hilltop neighborhood. I moved away when I was young, but I was very much connected to Hilltop through my family. We've got 5 generations of people that have lived there. So you have pioneers in this exhibit that actually were able to buy the land that we ended up residing on, and that we ended up residing on through actually racist practices like redlining and, a way of segregating people into certain places that they were only supposed to live. So there's so much history and there's so much revelation that came to me through this experience of, working on this project. So I think I answered what you asked, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I think one of the things I've really come to learn in doing local history work is just how important that personal connection often is for people in wanting to explore more about, maybe the town where their family has lived for generations. And often, depending on who those people were, who were your ancestors, those stories are easier or harder to find. And, it sounds, you express that about not learning certain things in school, but then discovering them later through your own work. And I think you now are doing work that will share those stories with more people, which is wonderful. And that's why we're so excited to have that on display. I think one of the things I wanted to ask you also is, I know several of the pioneers have a maybe less direct connection with Tacoma. They're maybe from somewhere slightly else in the Puget Sound region, as you mentioned, but are there one or two specific to Tacoma that where their stories really impacted you when you researched them, and how did that come out in the portraits that you painted?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things is, well, just to clarify something, I ended up, I hired as an artist um, to paint these portraits, but because I was young, because I was interested, I actually worked with the then director to research some of this history through the Northwest Room at the Tacoma Public Library. And but I wasn't the historian. So but over the years, I've learned a little bit about each one of them. So I would say one of the people that really stuck in my mind is George P. Riley. And he was a man that actually created the Workingmen's Joint Stock Association. And that association later purchased some of the acreage that is right now Tacoma's present day Hilltop. And so that pioneer definitely has connections to the local area. Also, you mentioned Nettie Asbury, and Nettie, well, she had a lot of different things that are connected to her. She helped to establish the Tacoma chapter of the NAACP in 1913. And she also was instrumental in organizing demonstrations that led to the defeat of a racist law, actually, a powerful rules committee measure against interracial marriages in the state of Washington. She was also a teacher. She, oh wow, I mean, as I said, I'm not a historian, but she was instrumental in the Colored Women's Club and founding chapters, and just she's the only woman that was part of the selection. Doesn't mean that there weren't many other women in that age doing instrumental things, but for this particular series, that's how it came out. But I was really influenced by her, especially because she's the work that my grandmother actually did and the connections that she had working with organizations like the Colored Women's Club as well. So again, it's that personal connection. So those two pioneers, I think they have probably the most connection locally. But yeah, I think there's many more that it's hard to pick.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I don't want to talk about all of them because I want people to be excited to come in and see the exhibit in person. So I just want to give people, the inspiration to want to come in. Dr. Asbury is someone I've researched as well because of my particular interest in local music history. And she was played the piano, and she was a musician and a piano teacher to literally thousands of young Tacoma kids for generations, and just obviously such a generous soul. Everything I've read about her is that she just truly believed in equality and spent her entire life fighting for it, and just spent so many years in service to our community. She's such an inspiring woman to me. Yeah. I was curious to ask you, as I mentioned, as someone who's also kind of combining worlds of art with interest in history. Why do you think that art can be a way in for people to learn more about history? So, you are an artist, and that's your primary mission, but you got involved here in a historic project. What do you think the parallels are, or what can be good about the arts as a way for people to explore history?
Wow. I think I was talking with someone earlier today because of the other exhibit I'm working on that has to do with stories, particularly about my family's history in Hilltop. And I think that artists, through their work, tell a multiple amount of stories. Like you can get multiple stories out of one painting. I know for me, there's all sorts of different meanings that I have attached to each piece that I create. Sometimes it's hard for me to even explain it because there's so many different inspirations. So I think that artists are, they are our somewhat of our interpreters of life, but they're also they're a reflection of humanity, right? Because we're all individuals, and so art is just really, I think it's a way to exploring, and it doesn't mean it's always a fantasy. It's exploring real tough subjects. It's exploring reality, but it's giving people a way in, and I think there's these different ways that we can reach people through different forms of art, like music and dance and painting, and so we have to be open to that, because over time, if anything stands, that art is going to reflect what has happened in that community, in our world, good or bad. The art will reflect it. So, there's just so many uses, and it's just part of us, we're creative creatures, so.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think, and as someone who, works for the museum and wants to get people as excited about local history as I am, but I know that, I know sometimes people hear the word museum and they tune out a little bit and they think, oh, that's going to be boring. Any creative and different and new way that we can tell stories, I think, is really important. And that's one of the things that I think is so special about your work and this project that you shared with us. I want to ask you a question that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you. So the portraits are larger than life. What was your inspiration for making that decision, that artistic decision to make these figures larger than life?
Oh, now I have to rack my brain on certain things. So I think that for me, so this was a commission project. So there were certain parameters, and I worked with a director, but there was a lot that was left to me to sort of decide and figure out. And there's just something about seeing the figure in sort of an exaggerated state that I thought would make an impression. And it was, my first series. So, it's hard to say exactly why. I know that it's what I ended up with. It's what I decided to do. But I think it was more about valuing this information so much at that time that I just wanted it to be very prominent. I wanted it to be, I just wanted it to be something that when you walk in the room, you felt, in their world. And I think that might be more of the decision as to the size.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I just was curious to hear more about the background on that. Yeah. So can you tell me more about, you mentioned that you're working on a new project now, and anything else that you have going on that you'd like to share, whether it's specifically related to history or not, but what other projects do you have going on right now?
Yeah, it seems like everything I have going on is related to history. So I'm discovering more and more things about myself as I go along. And so I'm doing an exhibit right now. It's on view at the Tacoma Public Library, online virtual gallery. And if you were to go to tacomalibrary.org/Hanford Gallery, you'll see my exhibit. It is called Hilltop Stories, Visual and Audio Reflections. I have a co-artist, Whitney Brady, who has created the Hilltop Listening Project. And so the exhibit consists of my paintings, which it's really a story of my family. And I come from a creative family, artists and writers and musicians and singers. And so I wanted to share their story for a long time. And so I'm doing that in combination with another artist who also had the same vision, really, to share the story of the community at large. And so we've combined my art and his audio interviews. And so when you go online, you'll see that, and then you'll be able to hear stories from community members. And so this exhibit's special to me because, again, it's really about this time in my life where I felt the most cared for, the most surrounded by loving people, and just really connected to my community. So I wanted to share that. And so that's exciting for me because it's been something, like I said, I've wanted to do for a long time. And about a year ago, connecting with Whitney and some other people, which is another project I'm working on, I'll tell you in a second. It's all kind of been around sort of reigniting this interest and this need and really the important work of archiving our historical story, archiving our history, right? Not because if we don't, it's subject to like go away if it's not recorded, if it's not, that's why we have museums, right? And libraries and things like that have this archival history. So, I thought that it's a call that I wanted to take up to do. So that exhibit is exciting for me. It'll be ending on February 6th. And then I'm also an artist, one of the artists that is helping to shine a light on another area that's connected to me and my family, as I mentioned before. And it's the fact that, the numbers don't lie. African Americans and their ownership of land, their ownership of homes is a direct result of racist practices, in banking, in real estate, in governmental laws that allowed certain things to happen. So what I'm doing is I'm working with a group in a campaign called Design the Hill, and I'm painting a mural along with other artists that will shed a light on the beginning stages of an opportunity for home ownership for the community, basically, in a unique and different way. And so we want to make sure that we reach people in the community, especially underserved people, Black people, people that have not had some of the opportunities that the numbers show are renters and not owners. And so that means that they're not gaining equity and they're not building wealth. And so they're catching up, right? We're playing catch up as a people. And so I want to I want to help show people that it is possible to own um, property and to have equity and to leave a legacy for your family and to not struggle. And so that's my desire. And that's my heart. That's the reason that I'm part of this project called Design the Hill. And you can read more about it. We're working with Forterra, who is a land development company. And so those are one of, a few of the things. So
Yeah, it sounds like you're just a little bit busy right now. You have a lot of projects going on.
I'm trying to focus, but be busy. Yeah.
Well, I think it's fantastic to make that connection that you've made from what you've said about, researching maybe some pioneer stories that have to some extent been lost and need to be reshared. And then also doing the work now to capture stories before they're lost. And to really, help build that sense of community through that work. It's just vital work that you're doing. I think this gives me a chance to mention one of the other exhibits that we have on display right now alongside yours, which is our Dreams That Matter exhibit, which we actually put together back in 2017 is when it first opened, but it tells the stories of civil rights and social justice leaders from throughout Tacoma history. So again, it's kind of it's a long timeline. There are some of those stories from very early in Tacoma's history, and also some much more recent. And it's a good place for people to learn, for example, about redlining and some of the practices you talked about that have prevented certain groups from playing equally in the economy and getting into home ownership and things like that. So I think it's really it's an important time for people to see that history is very current. We look at what's going on in the world around us today, and learning more about our history is a great way to understand those things that are going on around us today. And it sounds like that's exactly the work you're engaged in, which is just wonderful. So I will, after we're done talking and I put this together and I'm ready to share it with people, I will put some links on the screen while you're talking so people can find that work that you're doing. Yeah. Yeah. Is there anything I didn't ask you about that you'd like to share before I let you go?
Um, well, actually a student at the Evergreen Tacoma campus. And so I have had a desire to do that and continue my education. And so I'm excited about being involved with that community and that they have played a really huge role in just helping also providing another avenue for people through their education. And so I'm really excited about all that I'm learning there. And there's lots of different things that happen at Evergreen Tacoma. And there are a lot of different programs that are happening, especially this month as we're celebrating Black History. So I hope people go on and find out more about that. And I'm glad you mentioned Dreams That Matter, because the other thing I just wanted to say is I'm just kind of at even though this project that I did, this series was years ago, I'm just at the beginning of kind of discovering how to do this the best way, research. And there are so many people and organizations out there. Really, I think it's up to, if history and certain people's history, and you don't feel like you're getting a variety of history, or your kids aren't getting a variety of history in school, there are avenues out there for you to look into your community, like through historical societies or museums. And just remember that you, as a parent, as a community member, as a grandparent, you really are you're free to find that information in the community and educate your family about their local area, and then nationwide. But we do know the stories a lot of times nationwide. We don't always know what's locally right in our backyard. So do your research and get to the library and find out those things. So yeah.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think often we learn in school about bigger national stories but the local is what maybe more directly impacts our lives and how we experience life in our communities. So I mean, that's why I'm so proud to work with Tacoma Historical Society, and it's important work. Um, so I will just share how people can come in and see your work. So thankfully, we are now reopened again. We're constantly contending with the pandemic, but we've been, we've been closed, we've been by appointment, but we are now actually open. We're requiring everyone to wear masks and be socially distant, but people can come into the museum. So we are at our still relatively new location of 406 Tacoma Avenue South, and we are open Wednesday through Saturday, 11 to 3. If people have questions about any of these exhibits that we've talked about, we also have our new musical history exhibit that I was involved in putting together. That's also just opened, so lots to see there. I encourage people to go to tacomahistory.org, give us a call, send us an email. I'll put all that up on the screen, but great time to come in and learn about really vitally important topics to Tacoma history. So thank you so much, Dionne, for talking with me, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Kim. Thanks for asking, and it's been great talking.
Thank you.